Good afternoon.
Hello?
Hey, Matt. Good afternoon, sir. It's Chris from Head to Head. How's
Good,
everything?
Chris. How are things with you?
Hey, man, we finally got this thing going, huh?
You're not talking to the most technical savvy guy in the world.
Hey, no, that's okay. I'm glad we were able to work through it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was looking forward to talking to you guys.
Yeah, well, we are absolutely working for you. I'm a little biased. I'd seen. I'd be honest. I had seen your marketing is fantastic, so bravo for that. But I had seen your coffee somewhere, and I wish I knew because I'd like to give the appropriate attaboy. But my wife ended up getting it for me last Christmas. Your Jarhead Java. That with a nice Chris Stapleton album, and subsequently it was a great Christmas. And I drink your coffee pretty much daily now. She orders it
Uh,
for me.
we appreciate that, and as I say to people, like we're doing some marketing now, and what we're pointing out to people, it's the Christmas season, holiday season, and what better gift to give than something that not only gives you a great cup of coffee, but then you get the follow through back with the giving back down to those who have served and sacrificed, and a lot of them need a lifetime of assistance. So it's like giving and then giving again. So that's what we're saying to folks here at this time of year.
I appreciate that, and that was the other part of me that drew me to your brand as opposed to some of the other brands that I've seen. Obviously, there's the Dunkin' Donuts and the Starbucks, and they have their place in, I guess, in life. But I'm always out looking for other good coffee. I actually sent your coffee to a customer of mine who's a big coffee drinker out in New York, and he enjoys it as well regularly as well. So. Um, again, I'm a little biased in having this conversation with you, I know, but I really do appreciate you coming on board. And I did see, given, the logo and kind of where your proceeds go to was also, very sincere for me to go ahead and start purchasing your coffee. Can you tell our listeners where, what affiliations are you set up with?
Well, the we wanted to go to a fund or an organization that was recognized and but more importantly, Charity Watch and Charity Navigator are the two watchdog groups out there that oversee funds, and there's many funds out there, and this was all a learning process for me because there's two types of 501s. There's those that are not required. You can be a non-for-profit, but not be required to give your accounting numbers at the end of the year. And then there are those that are, and again, the 501Cs, I think it is, are the ones that do give out their numbers. They're transparent. And the Semper Fi Fund has had the longest stretch in terms of being highest rated by both Charity Watch and Charity Navigator. And the story with the Semper Fi Fund is special as well. It was started by the wives of three Marines who were with the 1st Marine Division during the invasion of Iraq. And they were out in Camp Pendleton. And one was a nurse, Karen Gunther, and she saw these kids coming home banged up. And a lot of them didn't even have the wherewithal to monetarily to get family in to visit them. So they sat down at a kitchen table. They went to General Mattis and they presented to him what they wanted to do. And he gave his blessing and he gave his support. And he still does to this day, my understanding is. And, we fast forward to today. That was 2003. But you fast forward to today, they've raised over, I believe, I don't have the up to date, but the last I looked, it was over $170 million. And they give 94% back. So it's a special
Wow.
fund. I had a friend of mine, a buddy who, one of the wives, Wendy Lathan, her husband was a Marine Corps colonel, and a buddy of mine knew him very well. So I approached my friend and said, we'd really like to, this is an idea we have, and we'd like to see, it has a potential to bring a long-term revenue stream. It's a consumable, and it's not contingent upon donations. And so they presented it to Karen, And we were at that point, and I believe we still are. We're the first commercial entity that they've allowed to use their logos. They're very protective of their logos. So it's a real honor and privilege for us to have them give the trust they have in us to be able to go and do this. And the other thing that I always kind of preface things with is, you hear Semper Fi Fund and you think it's only Marines. And initially it was only Marines and or personnel that were attached to Marine units who were wounded at the time, who they supported or they helped out. And that was mostly Navy corpsmen, of course. But now, 6 years ago or so, they changed that. And so it doesn't matter what service branch that you're serving in. If you're wounded, you get in line with everybody else. So it's not just Marine centric at this point. It's all the services that they extend their help to.
We definitely appreciate that at Head to Head, because we reach out to not only our Marine Corps brothers and sisters, but also all of our other military service veterans that are current, and obviously our veterans and their families, and anybody else that wants to join in and listen in, so-called civilian world, law enforcement, fire department. We have a lot of different people and resources that tune in. So, I mean, again, biased, the Marine Corps in itself, but I do appreciate that the fund actually helps out other military personnel as well. That's outstanding.
Yeah. It's and that was the interesting thing for us as well, because initially when we came out, it was Jarhead Java, which is Marine centric. You can't get much more Marine centric than that. Right. And then when we wanted to branch out and go into AFES and the Navy Exchange and the Coast Guard Exchange, my initial feeling was that there's inter-service rivalry, but that stops at the hospital door. It doesn't matter what uniform you're wearing. If you need help and assistance and you've served and sacrificed, then I don't care. It doesn't matter what uniform you wore. It's all part of the brotherhood and the sisterhood. And so this is one of the great things that I love about it as well. I mean, my dad was a World War II Marine, but he was the youngest of 16, and there were 14 boys and 2 girls. And I always like to say that the 2 girls must have felt like indentured servants. All they did was cook and clean. But 3 served in the First World War. One actually was a Silver Star recipient. He was in the Army with the 77th, the Statue of Liberty Division, and for action in the Meuse-Argonne offensive in France in 1918, he was awarded a silver. He left it to me with the original citation. It's actually solid silver from Tiffany's. I don't.
Wow.
Yeah. It's.
We don't get that anymore.
No. But then there were 5 who served in the Second World War, and my dad being one who was 20 months in the Pacific with the Marines. Pelelu, he survived that, and then he had 4 other brothers, Army Air Force. Back then it was Army Air Force, a couple of them, and one was a communications tech. And then there was the one brother who served in both World Wars. He was in the Navy. He was on an old 4-stacker destroyer in World War I doing convoy duty. When the Second World War broke out, he was an engineer for the roads of Nassau County in New York, and he went down and signed up as a CB, and he did 4 campaigns. And in his last campaign, it was on Okinawa, where he ran into his son, who was also a Navy CB. So it's a pretty neat story. I have the newspaper clippings from it. And so, it's a family that has served and sacrificed. And I'm proud to be part of it.
Well, I was going to suggest, I'm really, again, I was really excited to get a hold of you and actually get in touch, not only for the coffee, but also the background, at least what I was able to find from you, as far as, your lineage. I knew, based off of some of the readings that I found on you, that your father served our country in the Marine Corps in World War II, which, that's, they say it, right? It's the greatest generation, and have that, but also now your lineage and your heritage through the bloodlines. And it kind of, just resonates to me, and I'm sure it's going to resonate to our listeners as well. The fact that you took an idea of coffee, just kind of a basic thing, right? I mean, everybody knows coffee, everybody's heard of coffee. You either like coffee or you don't, but at some point you've tried it and you put the two together. And it also it intrigues me that um you've been in the coffee. This isn't the coffee business to you wasn't just, hey, an idea, Jarhead Java. You actually had or you do have quite an extensive background in just coffee, right? Something 35 plus years in the coffee business. You actually lived out in Brazil for a period of time, and you did some different things outside of Jarhead Java.
Well, what happened was when I was younger, when I was 3 years old, I was struck with my right eye with an arrow, and it had to be removed when I was 7. So I
Oh,
never had an opportunity to serve, and it was something that I always wanted to do, but unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. So I ended up in the coffee business, and actually, how I got in was from I played ice hockey. I was a goaltender, and like I used to say, I was the best one-eyed goaltender in North America. I played in
that's fantastic.
played in college, and then I got into the coffee business through meeting a friend on the hockey team whose dad was in the green coffee commodities trading business on Wall Street. And I started as a runner and literally, delivering envelopes and all. And then I was picked up by a Brazilian trading company that was opening an office in New York. And I was with them for 10 years. I lived in Brazil for a couple of years. Then I was tabbed by another Brazilian firm, an agri firm. They wanted to open up their global headquarters in New York for both procurement of green coffee around the world and also the sales arm of the company there. And I put it on Long Island because I was tired of commuting into Manhattan. And it happened to be right down the block from the 1st Marine Corps recruiting headquarters, 1st District recruiting headquarters in Garden City. And I met a bunch of the Marines there and befriended them and did all I could to support them and their families. And great friends. And to this day, every single one of them I stay in touch with. We once a week we talk or whatever. But when I retired, I was the CEO of the company. And when I retired in 2005, I always wanted to be able to do something. So I went to them, and there were some senior officers, and I said, look, I'd really like to get a deployment to Iraq. And in 2008, I deployed to Iraq as part of the LOGCAP logistical support. And initially, I was supposed to go over in procurement, senior procurement. And my monitor told me, I kept going back and saying, when am I going? When am I going? And she said, Matt, these particular positions, there's only a few of them. And you're in the green zone, and you're in a cubicle, and you live in a hotel. And she said, you'd be making over 200K with the uplifts. And she said, so they don't give them up. And I said, well, I really want to get over. What do you got? And she said, well, we got an opening in the mail mission. She said, but you're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, humping footlockers. And she said, most likely you'll be living in a can. And, that's the way in a, community head. And I said, yeah, that's what I want. I'm not going over there to sit in a cubicle. I want to be in with the guys. So when I got there, I was at Camp Liberty for a while. And then I volunteered to forward deploy and was sent up to Fob Warrior in Kirkuk. And I loved it because I got to work the window. I was an admin assistant working the counter. And so I got the kids, all day long. I say kids because when you get to be 65, you can say that. I was 55 at the time, but just working with them. And I was the unofficial bank. Kids would come up and their Eagle cards were tapped out and they didn't have any money and they're trying to send a letter home to their families or their kid. What am I going to do? Say, you're $1 short. Sorry, can't send it. So, it became one of these things that, I was the unofficial bank and I got paid back by everybody, though. I'll tell you, they were all great kids. I used to say to them, it was 10th Mountain Division that was there, and I used to say to them, you guys are really good. You could almost be Marines, and they'd, yeah, no good.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, and this is what I find very impressive, just from your character, sir, is well, a number of things. One being that you come from a family that has served this country over the years, and actually is what formed it to be the free, independent world or country that it is. So for that, I appreciate. But the second part of it is that you wanted to serve in the physical aspect going in, swearing in, and doing the whole deal. And because of something that happened at 3, you weren't able to do. But in turn, you actually turned that into a motivational piece. And then at 55, you're over there and supporting the mission in Iraq. That to me is impressive.
Well,
I mean, from A to B, from start to finish, is impressive. And I can tell you, just as a grunt that was overseas, any kind of resemblance of home or anything like that boosted morale. So I personally appreciate
well,
that.
thank you. It was the greatest experience in my life. I look back; it was something I always wanted to be able to do, and actually I had a second deployment lined up. I was selected to be team lead for what was the Task Force for Business and Stability Operations, and I was 2 weeks out. I had my physical, had my shot card updated and all, and I was getting ready to leave. I was out of Helmand at Camp Leatherneck, and as it turned out, at that time, the commanding general of 1st Marine Division was Jody Osterman, General Osterman, who's now got 1 MEF. And he was a friend of mine. He still is. I was out at the change of command. And he sent me an email and he said, Matt, all your paperwork just went past it through, and I'll probably see you in about 2 weeks. And he said, I'll buy you dinner at the chow hall. Haha. But so I was all psyched, because it would have been a great, I enjoyed humping Foot Lockers to get over there, but this would have been a different kind of level of responsibility and obligations. But they pulled the funding on it like a week before we were due to leave. So that was a huge disappointment. But and in fact, it was General Osterman who kind of was the catalyst behind the idea, because when he took over MARSOC, I was down there, or I should say up there. I keep thinking I'm living in New York. And I said, hey, sir, is there any chance of me getting, something else to get over? And in a very nice way, he said, Matt, you're too old and you're too fat. And and he said, look, you have this extensive background in coffee. Is there something maybe you could do there that would work to continue supporting? And that's the genesis behind all this.
Yeah, I mean, I find that fantastic, and again, your marketing is fantastic, the story's fantastic, but the actual tasting and the brewing of the coffee is also it's just a very nice, smooth taste. At least the Jarhead Java that I've had. And how is that process? Or is that something local, or are you getting that outside? How is that process? How are you bringing that in, and how are you getting it to our warriors out there in the field and stateside?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that was one of the most important things for me. I said, look, we're going to be coming out with a generic product, and generic products, by their very nature, people have this perception that the quality isn't that great. I mean, you look at Girl Scout cookies, they're not the greatest quality, but you buy them once a year because you're donating. It's not about the quality of the product. But I said, look, we're going to need a top quality product, because we will get people to come in and try it with a give back. They'll see the 50% give back and they'll say, oh, okay, I'll give it a try. But if it's not a top shelf gourmet coffee, then they're not going to come back, because they'll say, if they're coffee drinkers, they'll write a check to the Semper Fi fund rather than continue to drink lousy coffee. And so I went to, and I said, well, we're going to buy nothing but 100% Colombian Arabica coffee, because the government in Colombia regulates the exports, because it's such a big hard currency earner, legal hard currency earner. So there's a government entity that oversees. So there's only 2 different qualities that are exported. So we're buying the exact same coffee that's in a Starbucks bag or a Dunkin' Donuts bag, exact same coffee. You could pull one off one pile, one off the other. So that's, and then we did a little tweak on the bold roast. Now, how we procure it is, I went to the largest green coffee trading company in the world is the NKG Group out of Hamburg. Their North American entity is called Rothfuss Corporation. They're the largest importer of green coffee into the United States. They service every Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Folgers, everybody. They're 20% of total imports. The company, wow. The total company turns over $2.6 billion a year. Coffee is the
My goodness.
second largest cash valued commodity traded in the world after oil. So Rothfuss Corporation they have origin operations, buying offices in 36 different countries. Uh, the CEO of Rothfuss Corporation is a fellow by the name of Dan Dwyer. Dan, I got him his first job in coffee 42 years ago. In fact, he took my runner's job when I got my job with the trade house. I got him in as a runner. Now he's the
Wow.
CEO of Rothfuss in North America. His daughter, well, he has twin daughters. He has three daughters, but two older twins. I'm the godfather for one of them. And he just bought a house 15 minutes away from me in Hendersonville here in North Carolina that he's going to retire in. So Danny's like my brother. And Danny is a huge patriot. I mean, he loves this country. He loves our military. And we wouldn't be able to do this without him. But what he does is when we're buying our coffee, he buys it directly from the farmer. And so the farmer's not about to try to screw the biggest coffee buyer in the world. So we get the top premium quality coffee. Then he brings it along through his logistics train. We bring it up to Omar Coffee Roasting Company in Newington, Connecticut, and they roast and package it there. Will be the new Bravo Zulu Java and the new Stars and Stripes Java, which were specifically for Coast Guard and the Navy, the BZ coffee. And the Stars and Stripes, well, we had to go somewhat different there. It's tough to kind of find a whole lot in common between the Air Force and the Army. And I said, okay, what we'll do is we'll package it with a patriotic theme, Stars and Stripes, and then we'll put a military themed packaging on it. So we took the reverse muted flag the Army wears on their right shoulders. The star field always has to be facing forward, and it's by regulation. Okay. So it's proper. And also on, look, Air Force One on the right side of the aircraft, the flag is reversed. The other thing it did was it generates a whole lot of interest because, in fact, when we submitted it to AAFES, they came back and they said, the flag's backwards. I said, no, you guys, you don't get it. That's the way it's supposed to be. And they said, yeah, but we looked at it and it looks wrong. And I said, okay, that's marketing 101. You looked at it, you had to look at it again, you had to walk over and pick it up. So we finally explained to them to the point where they said, yeah, okay, that works for us. So that's we can also use in the civilian markets because Stars and Stripes, civilians will pick up on that patriotic theme. Then they'll like the military kind of, we have like I say, it's the muted flag patch reversed. And with that as well, you got to look and you got to say, most people, Jarhead, they're not going to know that. Bravo Zulu, what does that mean? So this way we're military centric with the military, with those that understand it. And then we're going to have this Stars and Stripes Java that will gather attention because of the military packaging. And then if they go over and read it and see the 50% give back to the Semper Fi Fund, and we have a little explanation of the fund. So it all should play together. But right now we're focusing on the exchanges and commissaries. We're in the Marine Corps Exchange. We've been in there for a few years. We had a trial run. We needed to sell 60% of our coffee in 60 days. We sold 70% in 30 days and 100% in 60 days.
Wow, that's outstanding.
Yeah, so we're now talking to AAFES. We're in the process. We've been approved quality-wise. We've been approved packaging. There's details we're working on. The Navy Exchange, I don't get because we were voted in to the way they work it at the Naval Academy, Annapolis, is the brigade. The members of the brigade vote on any new foods they're brought in. And I love it because I think the director of food services is brilliant because, look, you guys, if halfway through one of the school year, they say, hey, this stuff is really horrible. Well, you guys voted it in. Don't blame me. But we had a runoff against the company that had been their supplier for the last, I don't know how many years. And what I was told was there were 125 votes cast, and we took all 125 votes. But as I said, if you're a student at the Naval Academy and you're going to vote against Bravo Zulu Java and Jarhead Java, then you shouldn't be at the Naval Academy.
I agree. I agree with that.
So we're there. We're in the midshipman store, and then this year, the Navy athletics and Navy football. They review every year. They have a partnership with a coffee company. And we presented our case to them. And as it was, I don't like to say names, but it was one of the biggest coffee companies. And we were chosen over them. And as they said, they're not giving 50% of their profits to support these kids. So, and then, excuse me, but we can use the logos for Navy football and athletics, and we've run into some headwinds at the Navy Exchange, but that we'll work through those, and I think they'll understand that it's they work for the sailors and the Marines,
right?
And the first priority should be, look, why should you want to put a priority on putting a coffee brand on your shelf that is distributing profits to shareholders around the world that don't care at all about our military, when you can have a coffee company there that's bringing in money? I mean, MCCS, the people over at Marine Corps Community Service, they've told me they love Jarhead Java because it's bringing money into the MWR fund, and that's the whole object of the exercise. So
Sure.
So we're hoping that we can get into there, and then we can get into the big one we'd love to get into is the commissaries, because that's where the bulk of the groceries are sold. But it's a process, and we continue to move forward, and we are getting a whole lot of small defense contracting companies. We'd love to look, if you're Northrop Grumman or you're Boeing or you're Raytheon, and you're buying coffee for your cafeterias and your office spaces and break rooms, here too, why do you want to buy coffee from a multinational that's distributing profits out elsewhere, when the very equipment that you're manufacturing and selling your big customer is DOD, and the very people you should be supporting by buying our coffee for the give back? It makes no sense not to do otherwise.
Sure, and I appreciate that. And I actually, I guess my question would be, if you don't have access to the commissary, say you don't have that access or whatever, can they find your coffee yet in a retail type store, or is that something they got to get online?
Yeah. See,
and how do they get that? Where would they find it online?
Well, if you can get it at MCX, but if they've changed things now. Whereas in the beginning of the year, you can go online. If you excuse me, if you served and you have a honorable discharge, you can go online and register to shop at any of the commissaries and exchanges online. Even if you put in 3 years or 2 years and you get an honorable discharge, they've opened that up and made it available to any veteran. So it's a huge savings for people, so they can buy online. But my understanding is as well is they're going to start issuing. You have to go to a website and register, and you have to put in your DD 215 and get approved. You have to be vetted. But if you get that, my understanding is they're going to start allowing people on base to shop physically at the exchanges and commissary. I do know now, like I say, though, it's already in place that you can buy online. We're not online at these places yet. We get into AFES, and part of the discussions we're having is that they will put us on their online website. But right now, if you don't, MCX, we're in 89 of them, I think. We're hoping that we have the AFES trial, and we do well there. I am sure we will, in which case we'll be going into over 200 AFES stores. We're hoping, again, the Navy Exchange is going to come around and see that, our partnership with Navy and athletics and football, and the fact that we're the official coffee in the chow hall there at King Hall counts for something.
Sure.
So, and then we'll look at the civilian markets, because for me, what I wanted to do is to establish ourselves in the military, in these exchanges and commissaries, because that's the demographic that knows exactly who the Semper Fi Fund is and will support it. And the other thing is, I'm not looking to keep my 50%. I mean, the good Lord's been kind to me. I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm at a point in my life where I don't need more. I just want to sit on the deck with a decent bottle of wine and my dogs and a good book. So I'm going to be using my 50% to open an endowment fund in my dad's name, and help out smaller funds that I've seen out there that don't have the backing and so forth. The last three commandants of the Marine Corps have been supporting us. They're all involved with the Semper Fi Fund. So there's a lot of small funds out there that bust their butts to do golf outings and charity events and so forth to raise money that don't get the recognition because they don't have that presence the Semper Fi Fund and some of these other big funds, Fisher House and all do. So that's what I'd like to do with my 50%.
Well, I can appreciate that. I'm sure our listeners can appreciate that. Now you got the three flavor or the three coffees,
Yeah.
right? You got your Jarhead Java, your BZ, and your Stars and Stripes. What can we tell the listeners who are intrigued, but now they're going to go on your website and they're going to go to order this. They're going to go into the commissary. They're going to look for this. And obviously everybody's taste is a little bit different. What would you say is one more strong, one's more bold, one's more smooth, a lighter? How does that work with the three brands?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it was something that we wrestled with when we were, coming up with the two new. Because the fortunate thing is as I say, with Dan's company, Rafis, we can put together any blends we want from anywhere in the world. So the first thing we wanted to do was, there's two types of coffee out there. There's Arabica, and then there's Robusta. Robusta coffee is, it's an undergrade coffee. It's a different flavor profile. It basically tastes like rubber. There's about a 60-cent arbitrage, a discount to Arabica coffee. And again, there's pluses and minuses based on different qualities and different growing regions and all. But the Robusta coffee now is probably about 80% of what you get on the stores now from the big companies, which is why there's been such a movement into better quality coffees and gourmet coffees. So what I said, what we wanted to do is, the Colombian it's a really nice, we do a bold roast on it, very consistent. You can even get, sometimes you can get like a little orange in there, but it's a strong coffee, a good coffee, not so acidic that it makes it such, like some of these chain stores have. The acid is just too much.
Sure.
So
I agree with that.
So I said what we'd do is we would go and the high-grown coffees, Arabica coffees, which are washed, because here again, there's two types of processing. There's a wash process and there's a dry process. Central America, the high-grown coffees are Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Guatemala. They're really great coffees. They tend to be a little acidic at times, but they've got a real strong flavor profile. The higher up you go, it's like wine producing regions. The soil changes, it's more volcanic. You get a different kind of microclimate, and so you get the better flavor profiles as you go higher. So I said what we'd do is we would take 80% of that. And then, because sometimes it can tend to be a little acidic, the Brazil coffees they're a dry process coffee, but they're a very neutral coffee. So I said we would take 20% of coffee from two specific regions in Brazil, which are the finest growing regions, and that is the Cerrado and then Alta Paulista. And I said we'd take 20% of that, fine cupping, because you can get fine cup, which is the best. You can get good cup, which is mediocre. I said, but we'll go with the fine cup to make it consistency. And then that will cut any of the flavor, the acidity. And that's what we're going to do there. And then we'll do two different roasts with that. We'll do a lighter roast, and we'll do the bold roast. So you'll get two different flavor profiles, but from the same beans that we're going to use in it. And we feel that, here again, AFES is saying they want a bold roast. like a Reveille blend, breakfast blend, and then, another blend. We haven't decided what we're going to name that yet. But so, and as we go forward, uh, we'll add two things. We have the ability to do flavored coffee. We have the ability to do decaf. We can do whole bean. But right now, you don't want to get yourself with too many balls in the air. My feeling is you
Sure.
focus on what it is you can do best, make that happen, and then you can always expand. Which is one of the reasons as well. We've been approved for sale in Harris Teeter, Food Lion, Ingalls. Uh, but I've said to them, no, I don't want to do that until we have the ability to be able to go out there in the local markets and advertise as well. And that's what I'll use part of my 50% too, is to educate the consumers there and do the advertising so that we can be successful. Because the way it works in these stores, they'll give you a trial run, but if you don't succeed, shelf space is shelf space. They're not going to have dead stuff on the shelf. So I want to be certain that when we go into these stores, we have the wherewithal to have laid the groundwork so as to have the advertising, so as to do the promotion that's going to make us successful.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that information. My wife can attest to this. My dream scenario when I get out of the corporate world, so to speak, is to open a coffee shop up that caters not to your bigger brands that you can get at your supermarkets or your Starbucks or your Dunkin' Donuts, but more of the little bit less unknown but better coffees that are out there. That is my dream scenario. I would love to have it out in the mountains of Tennessee or West Virginia or even back home in Virginia where I was born and raised. But that's my dream scenario. So I'm always fascinated about coffee brands. And to what you talked about a little early, the marketing aspect is one thing. You're going to catch a Jarhead, a veteran Marine with the logo and everything, and they're going to get it, they're going to taste it, and they're going to say, oh, okay, that's just like everything else in the store. And then that you probably won't get that repeat business. But I'll be honest with you, that was kind of my take. Like it was like one of those things that you would find like in a Sergeant
Yeah.
Grit magazine, like one of those like kind of getting off on the Marines, a little bit there. But I'll be honest with you, I've been stoked to get this thing going because I had that impression. I had that assumption, and we all know what having assumptions really happen. Frankly, I think your coffee is by far one of the better coffees I've had, and that's not because you're on the show. It's truly a fantastic smooth coffee, and to your point about sitting on the porch with your dogs and drinking wine and reading a good book. I've been known to drink a little Jarhead Java, and right now I'm reading a good book. If you're interested, it's called On
I
Desperate Grounds.
I
It's about the
just bought that, and it was delivered a couple days back, and I'm in the process of finishing one, and I'm really looking forward to reading that one.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what, you made a great purchase. I purchased that last weekend, and I'm almost done. The stories about General MacArthur and kind of what you thought he was or is or wasn't, and then kind of seeing it from a different perspective with that particular conflict with the Marine General Oliver Smith, and kind of their yin and yang and kind of how they went back and forth and kind of what molded the Korean War. My grandfather was in Korea, Marine Corps mortarman out in Korea, and I've always had a special soft spot there for them, those individuals. So, yeah, that's a great book. You'll enjoy that.
The egos involved there on the Army side with MacArthur with one, but then Major General Willoughby, who was his chief of intelligence, who wanted to give the wrong, and he wanted to give what MacArthur wanted to hear, and then the arrogance of Ned Almond, who wanted to push that RCT 31 up and kept forcing them to extend their supply lines and go even when they heard the Chinese were there. And there's General O.P. Smith saying, I'm not going to push my men. I'm going to drag feet because I don't like what we're seeing here. I'm going to take time to dig out a scrape out of the frozen ground, an airfield at Haggeroo-Ree. So if we need to use it, we'll have it. And then to have Ned Almond telling people that OP's questioning his fighting spirit.
Right.
Because he was prudent enough
Yep.
to understand what was look like was gonna happen. But yeah, the great thing is I've read a number of books on it, but I love going back. Like this one, I'm looking forward to because you can read 3 or 4 books. I mean, I've read, and I'm sure how many books on Pearl Harbor or on the Normandy invasion or on Arnhem and A Bridge Too Far. But each time you get a book where there's an author that really researches it, there's these nuggets in there that you missed that you want to go back and pan, and it makes it so much interesting.
Oh yeah, and then definitely for me, it gives me a refresher of just history and what drew me to going into the Marine Corps when I was, I remember being 15 years old. I went down to the recruiting office, and he was like, "Well, you're too young." And I said, "I know, but I just want to. I want to know. This is what I'm doing." And he, my recruiter took me under his wings. But make a long story short, reading these books, and again, to your point, if you read one, you've read them all, but not really, right? Because you find the nuggets. It just refreshes you, and for me, it keeps me. The reason why I joined, the reason why I love this country, and the reason why certain things now I look at and I go, well, that's not supposed to really bother me, so I'm gonna let that one go, because these men and these women who molded what we should be thankful for really went through an awful lot to get us to this point, and I'm forever grateful for all the past generations, and frankly the generation coming back. I think the Iraqi veterans are going to be one of the top ones to talk about for years to come, and we can make a whole segment of talking about it, about the Vietnam vets as opposed to some of the other vets, and thoughts and all that stuff on that. But I think they're all in their own way have a special place in molding this country.
For sure.
And and I hope people don't take it for granted. It's one of them deals, right?
I like when you said you were down at the recruiter's office at 15. I remember when I was in high school, a senior in high school, I wrote a letter to the commandant at the time. I forget who it was, requesting that I be allowed to be granted a waiver to join the Marines, go through Parris Island. And I remember writing this stuff about, look, okay, I understand. I can only be a clerk or whatever, but I can free up a Marine to get over and fight. And I'm thinking, the whole idea is, let me get in the door and then I'll figure out how to way to work it. And I remember he sent a nice letter back saying, thank you, appreciate that and so forth, but no, can't. And I remember telling some of the buddies over at First District the story. And, okay, yeah, fine, And then fast forward a couple of years later, I come back from humping footlockers in Iraq, and I'm sitting there drinking with one of them. And he goes, he said, I remember you telling me that story about you writing the letter, and I thought you were full of shit. He said, but now I believe it. So, it's one of those things that you look back at, and the love of, Dad being a World War II Marine, we were brought up that, it was the overhead, it was the deck, it was the rack, it was the skivvies, it was, so.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I hear you. I mean, we're so fortunate as a nation to have, I think the general public has an appreciation for the military without question. And I think that to a great extent transcends political philosophy or ideology. There's always the hardcore that are not going to appreciate but in general they do, and that's something that keeps me happy in the sense that we've grown from those poor guys who came back from Vietnam who were spit on and called baby killers and everything, to a better place in terms of what the average American thinks of what these kids do and the service and sacrifice they provide for them. And what is it now? What is it? 2% serve? Yeah.
Correct. That's about where statistics tell you, yes.
And what I've learned, or what I've seen, observed to a great extent, it's like military families. It's like if your dad or grandfather was in, your kids go in. It's a tradition, and I think a military family, the traditions that are not drilled into you, but that you come to respect and you see is what something you want to perpetuate, because that's what's going to make this country great. Not just from a standpoint from a general overall making the country better. And so there is that appreciation, and that's part of. I mean, I work more now than I than
I'm
I get.
sure.
Well, I
I'm
get
sure.
phone calls at like 1 o'clock in the morning from these old time Marines out in California, and it's like, I got my box today, and the mug was broken. And I'm like, okay, sir, I'm sorry. Give me your name and your information, and I'll make sure we get your new one out. Yeah, yeah. I was on a mid float in 50, and I think of my dad, and who passed in 2004, and I don't have the heart to say, it's 1 o'clock in the morning here.
Right.
So sometimes I'm on the phone like for 20 minutes, and then at a point I'm like, sir, it's 1:30 in the morning here now. Do you? Oh, hey, I'm sorry. But God bless them. That's the thing about the Marines are Marines until the day they plant them, and even then.
Well, even then, the legacy goes. My son and I have two sons, and I'm hopeful they'll use their brain. Unlike I did, I was more brawn. Hindsight being hindsight, right? But if they ever came to me and say they want to go in the Marine Corps or any branch, I would be all for it. But then we'd have to have that conversation that's really, let's really talk about it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I really do appreciate not only coming on Head to Head and sharing your stories and things, but I really, really am grateful for folks like yourself that, you know, you weren't discouraged because of a physical impairment to not join, and you joined in your own way, and you've served this country by keeping the morale of the men and women that not only drink your coffee but are out there fighting. You're answering the phone calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, talking. And that, believe it or not, that goes a very, very long way to have a conversation. They're upset that their mug's broke, but when you give them a conversation and you listen to them and you really go, let's just have this conversation. And it's not something that you need to be doing. You don't have to do it. You don't need to do it. But that individual now, their morale is back up at a high point. And it's not about the mug at that point. Now it's just about, thanking you for your product and thanking you, more importantly, for listening to them. So for that, sir, I definitely am grateful for folks like yourself.
I thank you. It's just, it is, as I say, it's a labor of love, because, what excites me here too, though, is it has the ability, as I said earlier, to provide a long-term revenue stream of significant amounts of money, and it's not contingent upon donations that ebb and flow. I have, in fact, I have an appointment next Friday with an attorney here to set up a trust so that when I'm gone, and I hope it's no time soon, but what I want to make sure is that the 50% give back will always be there, and it will never be taken public, because I'd turn in my grave to have worked to see where we can be bringing in 7 figures plus, and then my desires for what it was to be and continue to be are not taken care of. So I'm in the process of having that taken care of. In fact, I offered to give 51% of it when I passed as to the Semper Fi Fund, but being a non-for-profit, they can't take it, because I figured to myself, who better to have 51% of it? They'd never change it.
Sure.
But unfortunately, they can't. But we'll set up a trust and make sure that it's going to continue the same way that I want it to do when I'm gone. Because unfortunately, I'd like to think that in 20 years there'll be no more wars, but let's not be that naive.
Sure. Well, sir, I definitely appreciate your time, and I hopefully we can stay in contact, and any new projects, any new coffees, any new things going on at Jarhead Java, feel free to let us know. Obviously, you got a customer for life in myself.
Thanks.
And, Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, I truly, honestly, my wife can attest. I hope to one day be selling Jarhead Java in some coffee shop, some little small coffee shop somewhere out in the mountains, and helping to contribute to your mission of giving back and giving to our soldiers and their families, and kind of doing my part, as well. So for that, I hope that does come to
I,
fruition on both ends.
I appreciate that. And I'll close by saying we're militaryjava.com or jarheadjava.com. And we're working with the Marine Corps League, with the Women's Marine Association. Looks like the Marine Corps Scholarship and Foundation will be coming on board. Marine Corps Reserve Association. We have a deal working with them that if you come on our site and use their coupon code, we have a supporters page, and use one of their coupon codes, you get free shipping, and we give a cash donation back to the Marine Corps, to all those organizations for every order that's placed. So it's a great deal, and like I say, it's helping them out as well. So we're trying to help out as many as we can in many different directions. So if you're a member of the Marine Corps League or the Marine Reserve Association, Women Marines Association, we reached out to Hope for the Warriors, another organization, a great organization, and the Semper Fi Fund is great in that they were like, hey, look, they're a great organization. We know them. We work with them. We want to help them as much as we're not in this just for us. We're in it for trying to get as much help out there. Put them on your supporters page. We authorize it, no problem. So a lot of people helping people, and that's what it should be. But like I say, yeah, militaryjava.group.com, not the Military Java Group, although that'll bring you there as well. JarheadJava.com will bring you there. BravoZulu.com will bring you there, or Java, BravoZuluJava.com. But right now, the biggest place is going to be online. We're in the process of getting reset up with Amazon, so we'll be on Amazon pretty soon. Again, they changed their platform, so we had to change everything the way we do business with them. But so we're going to be in more and more places. LinkedIn, we have almost 15,000 connections on LinkedIn. It's under Matt Phillips on LinkedIn, because I didn't know how to set it up, and I was afraid I'd screw it up if I changed it over.
Sure.
And then on Facebook, JarheadJava.com, Jarhead Java, and Twitter, Jarhead Java, we have about 8,000 followers on those two sites. So you can always find us there. We do a daily history posting. If you go back, in fact, it's funny because when we were talking about the Korean War, it started on the 28th, the attack in Chosin Reservoir. So we've been following that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of different places you can find us, and I hope people will follow us.
Absolutely. So, well, we're going to continue to spread Jarhead Java, if it's okay with you, on future podcasts. We'll continue to plug away with the Semper Fi Fund here at Head to Head, and hopefully, like I said, sir, hopefully me and you will stay in contact, and we love to get together with you, later on down the road into the new year, and see what else is going on over there with you guys.
For sure. Appreciate it. Very much so, because it's people like you who are helping us reach the goals that we're anticipating.
Well, absolutely. Anything we can do, sir, you let me know, and we'll be more than happy to oblige.
All righty. Thanks much, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. You take care of yourself, and take care.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.